What's up everybody, it's Joe here with Joseph Blake Photography, and in today's video we're going to talk about Apple's event. They did it. They've announced the iPhone 16s. There are 4 of them, and they've got all sorts of features and screen sizes and all the things, but I don't care about any of that because what I want to talk about is taking photos, taking video, and editing on the phone. But I don't want to talk about any of the AI shenanigans or any of that. I want to jump right into talking about still photos and video and some of the really interesting things that we learned about these new cameras. Because yes, now they are cameras at the event this week. Let's jump in. Real quick, I'm Joe. This is my channel, Joseph Blake Photography, where we talk about tech and gear and news and reviews and how-tos, and we go on some adventuroos. And if that's the kind of thing that you're into, I'd really appreciate it if you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if at the end of the video you thought that this video was worth your time, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button. Socials down below. We'll talk about more of those at the end. Let's jump into these phones. Okay, so first off, why do I call it a camera? This is a camera, right? It's got a lens, it's got a sensor, it's got a processor, it's got a screen, right? And it is a camera. Now, it is a dedicated camera for stills and video, right? That's pretty much all it does. It also does audio recording, but that's what this is designed to do. So there are a lot of people that would say, if it does anything more than just being a camera, then you can't call it a camera, right? It's a phone first. But now I think that these things have not only the new action button on the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus, now have a dedicated camera control button. The action button can be modified to do all sorts of things. A lot of people modified it to open up the camera app or your camera app of choice, say Halide. This new button on all 4 of these phones is specifically for taking pictures and video, which is why I think these phones can be called just as much a camera as they would anything else, especially since most of the marketing that was discussed around the cameras talked about multiple lenses and the ability to do all this cinematic and high-end pro stuff. I think we can start calling these not just phones, but cameras, and thinking about them not just as communication devices and as productivity devices, but as just on their own creation devices. I could see a world where you had an iPhone as your primary creation device, separate from your productivity and communication device that might also be an iPhone. It might be a Samsung phone or an Android phone of another kind. But I could see these things being your primary creative tool, just like you might see a camera. So if that's the case, if that's my theory, let's jump into the things that they've changed or updated or added in these devices, starting with the different camera lenses on the Pros. And the first lens I want to talk about is the 5X, the 120mm telephoto zoom tetra prism camera on the Pro and Pro Max. This camera got no change. It got no update whatsoever in this event. It's still 12 megapixels, still 100% focus pixels, however. Still a 2.8 aperture, still using optical image stabilization, not sensor stabilization. And it is now available not just in the Pro Max, but also in the Pro. So no matter which size phone you plan on buying, whether it is the smaller, I think 6.3 inch or the 6.9 inch, you're gonna get the 5X optical zoom telephoto instead of the 3X that was previously available on the smaller version of the Pro model. So no real change there other than the fact that it's now available in the smaller phone. Moving to the wide angle lens, the 13mm. This has honestly been my favorite lens on the Pro for quite some time. I use it quite a bit. They added macro functionality 2 generations ago, meaning that it has an incredibly short focusing distance. And I really do love that camera. That camera gets a huge update in this iteration. It is now not just a 12 megapixel sensor, but it is a full 48 megapixel sensor. Still 13mm, now an f2.2 aperture, so it can collect as much light as possible. It has a 120 degree field of view. The one interesting thing that they're mentioning on the Apple specs sheet is that it has hybrid focus pixels. Compare that to the telephoto and the main camera that has 100% focus pixels. And I'm not sure, this is the first time I've seen them say hybrid focus pixels. The front camera says that it has focus pixels, but it doesn't say how many. So maybe hybrid means that it's every other or every 4th pixel is a focus pixel. Obviously, with that kind of field of view, you're not gonna need as much in the way of focusing control, considering the fact that focus is a little bit easier when you've got such a wide field of view and an extremely shallow and extremely short focus distance. So higher resolution, though not stabilized, and it is not 100% focus pixels. Moving on to the main camera, which is still 48 megapixels, but they've now redubbed that camera the Fusion camera. And the reason for this is that in addition to now still being 48 megapixels, it has a f1.78 aperture, is using second generation sensor shift, optical sensor shift technology. So again, the telephoto is using optical image stabilization, the wide angle does not have stabilization, and the main sensor camera has second generation sensor-based image stabilization. It is 100% focus pixels, but the reason that they're calling it the Fusion camera is that it now has the capability of taking both the 48 megapixel full image as well as taking a lower resolution 12 megapixel image where it's going to bin those or combine that sensor data together and use the information from 4 pixels to get better sharpness and light data, and then merge that with the larger, higher resolution 48 megapixel image to get a hybrid 24 megapixel image. So you get the data from the 4, you get additional data from the 12. These are 2 separate shots that are probably taken almost at the exact same time and then merged into 2, which speaks to one of the major upgrades of this camera, because it is an upgraded camera in the fact that it's going to have considerably faster readout speed, and the readout speed allows it to do this and basically take 2 pictures at the same time and put them together. Apple's imaging pipeline has been doing this for a very long time, from their deep fusion mode as well as their HDR mode. They take a lot of images as fast as possible, read as much information off the sensor as quickly as possible, merge it all together into the best image that they can create. Now they're doing it in this additional way to create this fusion image. And so what they're basically saying here is that you're going to get, I think it's like 4 or 5 lenses equivalent out of this, virtual lenses, or as GoPro calls them, right, digital lenses. You're going to get the macro lens, which is the super short focus distance out of the wide angle on its own, the 24 millimeter regular main camera sensor, the 52 millimeter double optical crop into that sensor, which is effectively 52 millimeters. It's a 12 megapixel image. It's cropping down the sensor, but you still get all the advantages of the wider aperture and the sensor stabilization, right? So how many cameras is that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the 5th is your telephoto. So Apple's basically saying you have 5 cameras here. You get 3. It's 3 cameras. One of them has a crop and one of them has a special focus mode, but they're saying it's 5. The other tagline that I thought was really interesting that I read on their website is, and I want to read this so to get it right, 5 by optical zoom in, 2 by optical zoom out, 10 by optical zoom range. So if you count the 13 millimeter wide angle as like the base focal range, 13 millimeters, and then the 20 as the max, right? Not counting any digital zoom, then you have effectively like a 10 by range. Okay. Sure. Whatever. But basically in the main camera, they've done a lot to improve the capability of it from a speed standpoint, giving you these additional options within their imaging pipeline. The wide angle sensor is higher resolution, which is very good. And now on the smaller Pro iPhone, we have the optical image stabilized sensor. And in addition to giving us 48 megapixels of macro photography on the wide angle, now you also have lens correction on that same lens. And now because of the way that the lenses are configured, you can shoot spatial images for folks who have the Vision Pro. And the last feature that I want to talk about on the photo lens camera side is photographic styles. Now, photographic styles have been built into the iPhone for quite a while. The iPhone gave you the opportunity to create your own or pick theirs and then make that all your photos. And I'm just double checking right here that I've had mine on standard since I got it. I don't think I've ever changed it, but you can adapt that a little bit on your own now with these new cameras, in addition to having kind of a natural or neutral tone as well. Now, the downside to that feature previously was that those styles would be baked into the HEIF, HEIF, or JPEG image that you were shooting, unless you were shooting in their RAW mode. And if you shot in the RAW mode, your images were higher resolution, they took a lot more space on your camera, you didn't get all of the pipeline of applied features and whiz-bang magic that Apple does on your photos. Now the photographic styles are non-destructive, which means that you can go back and edit them later. Now, if you're like me and you're someone who shoots in RAW on your big camera, your big boy camera, and then you go into Lightroom and maybe you add a LUT or a photographic style, a preset, as we would call it in Lightroom, you just say, I can always reset the settings and redo that if I want to, or undo it, or change it, or go back. On the iPhone, you couldn't do that because in that pipeline, those things were all done in a split second and then everything was smashed together. Now you actually can go back and make that change. And that is a re-architecting of the way that they do their imaging pipeline for non-RAW photos, which is really nice because then you can still apply your own creative look, but if you decide later on that you want to undo that, you can. Okay, now that we've talked about photo features, I want to move on to video, and then we're going to talk about this camera control button. So again, talking about the Pro cameras, not a lot has changed. Some has changed, but not a ton. On the iPhone 15 Pro, you could shoot up to 4K 60 in ProRes and in log. And what they've done now is add 100 frames per second and 120 frames per second. So now you can shoot 60, 100, and 120 using the Fusion camera, that 24 millimeter camera on the iPhone. So 4K Dolby Vision, right? No resolution increase here, but 4K Dolby Vision at 24, 30, and 60 on really any of the cameras, and 100 and 120. So it's 120 frames per second, 4K Dolby Vision or ProRes log out of that 24 millimeter Fusion sensor. That is huge. That is a lot of bandwidth coming off of a teeny tiny little sensor in a teeny tiny little package. There is, however, one caveat to that, which is if you want to use Apple's built-in camera app and just go straight from there to record these video modes, ProRes and log profile, you still have to shoot to an external recorder. Now we know that's not a hardware limitation, right? You can use a number of other apps like the Blackmagic app to record in log ProRes onto the phone. But I think here Apple is basically saying, whoa, you have to really want to do this because you are going to chew through the storage on your phone in a matter of minutes. Honestly, ProRes 422 in log is going to, in 4K 60 or 100 or 120, that's a lot of data and it's going to get recorded very fast and you're going to fill up that storage really quickly. So they're saying, hey, hold up, are you sure? Why don't you plug in an external storage device to be 100% sure? Or go with a third-party app. But there's one downside to that I'm going to talk about in just a second. So it is technically possible, but again, still at 60, 100, 120, if you want to shoot with their camera app, you do have to use an external recorder if you want to be shooting in ProRes and log. You can shoot in 4K Dolby Vision 120 just straight to the camera, straight to the phone itself, but that is also going to chew through quite a bit of storage space. One thing that they didn't change or update on this was the ability to go at a higher frame rate for 4K cinematic mode. I would have really liked to see 4K cinematic mode at 60 frames per second or higher. When I pick up my phone and go to shoot video of my kids, I love using cinematic mode. It just looks so cool. I love doing it. It's my preference. And I was really hoping that maybe we'd get a 60 or 120 frame per second upgrade there to be able to get more kind of slow-mo on that. Again, when I shoot my kids, I want to have those options if at all possible. But another big update in video recording to the Pro models is the 4-microphone studio setup. So there are now 4 microphones on the iPhone Pro and Pro Max that allow you not only to get amazing sound, but also the ability to mix it studio style and decide which streams you want. Do you want more of a stereo stream? Do you want more of a surround sound stream? Do you want more of the front vocals right in front? Like, you can really tweak that in camera as you're editing to really decide how you want that to be, which is really, that's pretty cool, especially if you're a solo creator who's using this device to get the best possible quality video and audio. But one thing to mention, as I did before, is that if you are shooting in 4K 120 or 60 and you're shooting in log ProRes to an external recorder, you will have access to this audio mode. If you're using a third-party app like Blackmagic, you currently will not have access to that additional audio mixing feature. So to get that feature, you have to be using Apple's app, which means if you want to be shooting in log and ProRes, you'll have to be using an external recorder. I don't find that as cumbersome as a lot of people have seemed to indicate on the interwebs with this camera. That seems kind of no-brainer to me. Although one thing that I would like to see is the ability to change which version of ProRes we're shooting in, right? There's 3 or 4 flavors of ProRes. I'd love to be able to shoot in ProRes 422 LT. with slightly lower bitrate and still get the log option, or at least ProRes standard, having to shoot in HQ, even using an external recorder, you are chewing up a ton of data. So I'd really like that as a potential option instead of just saying we have to go to the absolute top of the codec. Okay, last thing I said that we were going to talk about is the camera control button. So in the previous version, the Apple iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max, you had the action button, right? They took the action button from the watch and allowed you to configure to do a lot of things. They knew that a lot of people were gonna basically set this thing up as a camera button. So when they designed the next iPhone, they said, let's give them what they want. Let's give them this dedicated photo button. Now that ties in quite a bit into Apple Intelligence and their AI goals that they have going down. I'm not gonna talk about those, but that is a big part of having this button on the camera. They wanted to be able to just hit it and go with whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it's QR codes or taking a picture of a restaurant or whatever. But as a content creation professional, or as someone who just really likes to quickly grab their phone and take a photo, I can tell you that this is a huge improvement for me. And I am really happy that they made this change. I am currently using the 14 Pro Max. I do plan on upgrading to the 16 Pro Max. I normally skip a generation, but one thing I was really looking forward to was the button, and I was planning on using it for my camera option. Now I'm gonna have its own button. That's super cool. And the fact that it's going to be touch sensitive, to be able to do things like focus control or to manipulate a number of other features inside the camera app is, quite frankly, something that I almost wish that we would have in our big cameras. What if, in addition to this being your focus button, because I'm not a back focus person, I just don't subscribe to that idea. But if we had not only the press, the half press, but the ability potentially to just, I don't know, massage this guy a little bit and get some features out of that, I think that would be super cool. I think that is an idea that the camera industry can take from Apple. Now, we won't be able to see these features right away. Not all of the AE and F-Lock options are gonna be shipping with the iPhone, so that's a bummer. Hopefully we get that pretty soon, and I wouldn't be surprised if third-party apps incorporate that pretty quickly. So I'll be looking to my halide updates to see what comes out soon. And overall, I know that there are a lot of people out there saying that this has been a pretty boring refresh of the iPhone, considering the fact that much of the marketing has been related to their Apple Intelligence features, generative AI, and all of that stuff. And that stuff isn't even shipping right away. We're not gonna be getting that stuff until late fall, and some of it even into next year with the kind of fully updated version of Siri and integration of ChatGPT and Gemini and all that sort of thing. But I don't care. I want that 48 megapixel wide angle camera, and I want a dedicated camera button. And I want to be able to shoot 4K 120 in ProRes in log to an external recorder. And I'm gonna be able to do that with this thing. I know it sounds expensive, right? $1,200 for the base model. That sounds, oh, it's so much. But honestly, for all of those features, considering the quality of the video that we get out of these sensors and the amount of work that's being done on this pipeline, I'm excited to see it. And I do plan on doing a full in-depth review of the photo and video features once I have it in my hot little hands in a couple of weeks. So look to the channel for that. And if you're not already subscribed, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button so that you know when I drop that video. If you thought that this video was any good, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button. That tells me that I'm doing the right thing, and it tells the algorithm that I'm doing the right thing, and it really helps me out. Also, socials down below. I am slowly but surely getting the socials back online after my Facebook and Instagram accounts were hacked, but check me out down there on the Facebooks and the Instagrams. Still not 100% sure what I'm doing with TikTok. I'm on Threads, but I don't know that I know how to use it. And if you check out my website over at jblake.photo, you'll find my blog where I just posted about how to find the best photographer, especially if you're in the Las Vegas area. That's me. I'm a portrait photographer here in Las Vegas. That's me. I'm a portrait and landscape photographer here in Las Vegas. So if that's the kind of thing that you're interested in, go ahead and find my blog and go ahead and subscribe with your RSS reader of choice. Those are all ways that you can support the channel for free. But if you want to go that extra mile, you can always join the memberships that I have made available for the channel. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.